Today is race day, the start of leg 2 of the 14th edition of the Ocean Race, and our 5 teams have been soaking up the hospitality of Cabo Verde, a beautiful venue that served as a welcome pit stop after the furious conditions on leg 1. The city and the harbour, a chance to rest, repair themselves and their boats, and get ready to continue this round-the-world adventure. Our teams have been busy at work getting ready for leg 2, and this is what is waiting for them out on the racecourse at the moment. 10 to 15 kilometers per hour, wind from the northeast, and it's going to be pretty tricky for those sailors to get themselves out. Leg 1 complete, leg 2 about to start, and each of these legs that we have seen our sailors taking on here, just one piece of a puzzle that is a piece of that global race around the world.
The race is divided into 7 legs. It starts with a sprint from Alicante, Spain to Cabo Verde. From there, it's down to the southern tip of Africa, to Cape Town, which has been a regular host of the race. Next up is a record-breaking leg, the longest racing distance in the 50-year history of the race, 12,750 nautical miles, a 1-month marathon through the Southern Ocean from Cape Town to Itajaí, Brazil. This leg is worth double points, so it's crucial for teams to get it right. After the stop in Brazil, the boats head north across the equator and up to Newport on the east coast of the United States. The boats return to Europe on another double points leg with a transatlantic crossing to Aarhus, Denmark, followed by a flyby in Kiel, Germany, en route to The Hague in the Netherlands, and finally into the Mediterranean with the grand finale, this offshore leg to Geneva, Italy.
Sam Davies, former Ocean Race skipper, is here with me in the commentary box for the racing today. Sam, a tricky leg, a tricky race, and it's tricky right from the start gun.
Yeah, no, really tricky today. There's not much trade winds today, so it's going to be light wind start and tricky tactics to get out of Cape Verde.
And they have tucked this start line right into the harbour, so it's certainly going to be challenging for our teams. But let's get a closer look at each of those teams out on the water and find out what shape they are going to be in. Well, Team Holcim PRB, Kevin Escoffier and his team took the win into Cabo Verde after fighting for every mile. Tactically, this team played a very smart game, but their boat did suffer some teething problems and breakages, so this pit stop was a welcome relief. 11th Hour Racing team and skipper Charlie Enright had to settle for second place after being overtaken by Team Holcim PRB on the Spanish coast, but this crew has shown they won't be beaten easily and have plenty of speed to rely on. Team Milizia had a strong performance on leg 1, finishing 3rd, a result that will leave them with confidence if it wasn't for this 4th crew change. Skipper Boris Herrmann is out with an injured foot, and stepping up to the top spot, Will Harris, skilled and experienced, but with big boots to fill. Biotherm and skipper Paul Mayer, they led the fleet out of Alicante but was pulled back into the pack after the first 24 hours. They didn't find a chance to break out again, but leg 2, with its more open, wider racetrack, could be a much more to their style. Guyot Environment Team Europe, they won't be happy with their 5th place result in leg 1, but all that is behind them. For leg 2, match racing world champion Anne-Claire Lebert is on board, as well as Sebastian Samon filling in for co-skipper Benjamin Dutroux. So let's see if this team can find their form. And there is Guyot Environment Team Europe on the water at the moment. That port foil fully extended at the moment. That's going to be the foil that they're going to be using off this line, and you can see here, Sam, just how big the mountains are and just how much trouble that's going to be for the breeze as we get ready for the 5-minute countdown.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Warning signal is displayed. Warning signal is displayed.
The voice of Phil Lawrence, the race director of the Ocean Race, and the 5-minute countdown has begun. Sam, as always with sailing, we're always so focused on the breeze, but right now, I mean, this looks like a beautiful start in the sunset.
It does look absolutely magnificent. I'd rather be there than in the studio, I think. But yeah, it looks like there's a bit more breeze than everybody had hoped for, so that's good news. But as you said, the mountains here are huge, and so I think probably we're going to see some interesting shifts and tricky stuff to deal with on this first inshore part of this leg.
For Team Holcim PRB, I mean, Kevin Escoffier and crew, leg one obviously went very much their way, but it wasn't by a huge margin by the time we got to the finish line. So for Team Holcim PRB, you hope that they know what they did and they're able to repeat it again.
Yeah, I think the first leg was well, it was short, pretty intense, and once the boats got going in the trade winds, there weren't really many passing lanes. So yeah, this is completely different. This leg two, it's way longer. It's probably going to be nearly 4 times as longer in time. So a lot more opportunities for result changes and all kinds of obstacles and traps to fall into.
And for obviously Will Harris, the new skipper, at least for this leg, on board Team Militia, stepping on for Boris Herman, who's out with an injury. Identifying those problems early on will be key. I mean, I imagine here, Will Harris, we've got to be honest here, he's an exceptional sailor. He's got an awful lot of sea miles and some real experience. But surely, young sailor stepping into that skipping role, you're hoping that you get 1 or 2 early decisions right, that boosts the confidence in the first 24 hours.
Yeah, and you can see Nico Lundven at the helm as well. And yes, Will's taking over the skipper role from Boris. But when you're in a short-handed crew situation like this, everyone does everything. And they've got a real strong crew with Nico, Rosalind, Will, who know the boat really well.
Well, nice for Rosalind Kuiper on board Team Militia. Just to confirm that our start line clock is in sync. We are just approaching the 2-minute countdown and the race hasn't even begun, and you're seeing how hard they're having to work. Now, Sam, biotherm here, getting ready for the start, and that masthead code 0 coming out here. It's a reaching start. We're expecting to see these big reaching sails in play. Yeah,
they're perhaps not the biggest sail in the sail wardrobe, but yeah, the code 0, which is probably the most flexible sail that they can use at every angle of sail in this, or under 10 knots of wind speed. And yeah, this will be the sail that will get them fastest to that first mark and probably get them all the way around. We'll probably see them using that sail all the way around this first part of the race course. They've also got their outriggers, so I'm not sure that they're going to be trimming that sail from these outriggers, but that's a sign that they're potentially going to be changing to a spinnaker or a bigger downwind sail once they've got out of the inshore course. And with the breeze as forecast, with the breeze that you've been talking us through, that's completely true to form, because we are imagining that almost if you break up this first reach towards leg 1, that first turning mark, every 100 meters the breeze is going to be different. Perhaps a different angle, but certainly a different amount of pressure as we now hit into that 1 minute mark. 1 minute before these boats have to depart Cabo Verde and head off on leg 2. 4,600 nautical miles as we go on board now with Guyot Environment Team Europe. Robert Stanjek on the helm. Quite a change on board this team here. Yeah, 50% of the crew has changed, so they'll be...
Okay, accelerating a little bit here. 30 seconds, 100 meters. Okay, ready on the man. I need it. Robert Stanjek working the crew hard. 23 seconds, 80 meters. Guyot Environment Team Europe did not come off the line well in Alicante. You do not get many chances at a start line here in the ocean race. You've got to push the line quite hard. And in these final 10 seconds here, who has got their approach right? Who has got their speed ready to start off in style?
All clear, all clear.
And it's Guyot Environment Team Europe coming into the shot as we look down the line and coming across the line superbly. A bit of a difference in sail choice between Guyot Environment Team Europe Biotherm and Team Holcim PRB.
with 11th Hour Racing Team. They have got their Code Zero filled up, but that's a good start for Robert Stanczyk.
Yeah, great start, and well, great start for all 4 boats that we can see in this image. They were all within, I think, 5 or 10 seconds of the gun crossing that line, and for an offshore race, short-handed, that's pretty good performance.
You can see the difference in breeze as we look down off the harbour wall. The start line is right next to the harbour here, and it's Team Militia. They're the boat that have failed to get off the line at the moment. Obviously early days, but there, the breeze is waiting for them. The further these boats head off to the right-hand side of picture, the more they sail out into that gap between the islands here in Cabo Verde, off from Mendelo, and the wind is starting to whistle between these headlands here, and the speeds are coming up, 17, 18 knots, just flashing up here, and compare that with Team Militia on the left-hand side, still in that lighter wind area from the start, an area that we know they're going to have to sail back through. So the breeze is there, you've just got to find it. But the difference here in tracks, 11th Hour Racing Team sailing very high.
Yeah, so they're on their J2, and obviously they're going to have to sail higher to keep accelerating. Giro with the bigger Code Zero, they can actually bear away and sail a bit lower. Obviously, they think that their wind will be lighter as they get out towards the mark, maybe, and be able to. And so they're using that stronger wind right now to soak a little bit lower.
On board with Guyot Environment Team Europe, and they have opened up a big gap between themselves and 11th Hour Racing Team, not something that they did. Charlie Enright taking 11th Hour Racing Team higher and holding back Team Holcim PRB, holding back Biotherm as well. This will be very happy news to Robert Stanczyk, the skipper on board Guyot Environment Team Europe, and you can see now the lead starting to improve and improve. 55 metres now to the boat to leeward. 11th Hour Racing Team really being defensive.
And yeah, the boat speeds are dropping, so it looks like they are sailing into lighter breeze, and so maybe 11th Hour will start struggling a bit with their J2 now.
This part of the race, it's only the first reach. It's only just that first mile of racing of what will be 4,500 miles, but they are fighting so hard for these little boat lengths, and it's amazing to see how a decision that they make off the line, whether to go high, whether to go low, how that plays out over the next mile. And the angle here, as we are on board with Biotherm, what angle they are going to be able to sail into that first turning mark is going to be so crucial. Well, breeze is there. We can see the wind starting to sweep over the course, and they've got a left-hand turn coming. We are about now 2/3 of the way already complete towards Mark 1. You can see it there on the virtual animation. And this turn, Sam, is a 180-degree turn. At what point are we going to start to see them getting ready for sailing the boats on the opposite tack? You know, the weight, the stack, the adjustment, it's a lot to do.
Well, actually, I think you can see that some of them are already ready off the start line. Holcim, PRB, and I think Biotherm as well, they've got their windward foil down already, because this first leg is so short in short-handed offshore sailing terms, that they need to be ready for that jibe.
Biotherm just to windward at the moment of Team Holcim PRB. It's Guyot Environment Team Europe, still very much in the lead at the moment, but to leeward. And that first mark now coming into view. Where is Guyot Environment Team Europe? I think they have lost out. It's the boats to windward who've got the breeze first, that higher lane, even though it put them behind in the early stages of this first reaching leg. That means that they are now, at the moment, looking solid. If you're fans of Guyot Environment Team Europe, you'll be hoping they come into view on the left-hand side of your picture, and they are just out of shot. But look at Team Holcim PRB with that big Code Zero, putting the bow up at the moment, clearing their quarter from Biotherm. Paul Mayer behind Biotherm, now lining up for that turn. It's not about being first, second, it's about how aggressively you manage to turn around this mark. Biotherm behind, higher. They have an opportunity here to make a smooth turn on the inside. Team Holcim PRB holding a high course at the moment. The mark to the left, and that is why Guyot Environment Team Europe are the boat on the inside. They have been able to hold on to that left-hand turn. They look set to turn on the inside, on the right-hand side of the picture. Team Holcim PRB now going round that Code Zero. It's still out. It's a late furl if indeed they're going to do it. And Guyot Environment Team Europe will be rounding Mark 1 in the lead. They held onto that left hand, that leeward position, forcing the other two boats wide. That's put Team Holcim PRB on the high line, and has it opened the door for 11th Hour Racing Team as well. This looks like an easy maneuver, simply turning around and heading back the way you go. But it's not really something that you're meant to do in these Imokas.
It's pretty tricky jibing the Imokas. There's light enough wind to be able to throw the jibe right way through. Quite often offshore we actually goose ring the headsail before we pass the main across, which is what Biotherm are doing right now. But yeah, as we say, it's always tricky with only 4 winches in the cockpit. Guyot have got 5, so a little advantage for them. Maybe that helped them do that jibe a little bit quicker than the others.
Well, I'm having flashbacks to the bad furl that we saw Guyot do in the Alicante race, where it put them a long way back with that, well, shall we just say, poor boat handling, unfortunate boat handling. But either way, there's no display of that here in Cabo Verde. They're safely around that first turning mark and pulling again. Team Holcim PRB behind, slightly to windward. And as these two boats, first and second, with Biotherm out of shot in third, as these boats now clear 11th Hour Racing Team and Team Milizia behind, they've got the good breeze back with them again. Team Milizia round the back, and you can actually see Rosalind Kuiper on the bow, pulling, physically pulling, not using the winch, physically pulling the leech of that Code Zero round.
It's always tricky to get the Code Zero round the headsails, because you've got the J3 and the J2 to get the clue of that Code Zero round, and there's not much room between the J2 and the luff of the Code Zero. So it's pretty helpful in the light winds to actually run up there and use your body weight to help get that sail through. But you can see 11th Hour, they've deployed their Code Zero now, taking advantage of the jibe to deploy that smoothly and furl up their J2.
Biotherm in third place, just ahead of 11th Hour Racing Team in fourth, with Team Milizia round and wide at the moment of the mark in fifth. 11th Hour Racing Team now sailing back. One crew member on the bow, keeping a keen eye on the trim, on the breeze, on the boats as well.
Obviously it's difficult with the closed cockpits to really see the trim well, so it's good to take advantage of the flat water and not getting hosed by the waves, to go up there and check the trim out from on deck. You've got a much better view, and then you can mark your sheets for later on when it's a bit rougher.
And once again, I mean, as always with the leg departures, I'm always noticing those sailors that are standing on deck in shorts and T-shirts, and you're thinking, I hope you stay dry, because anything that they get wet now is going to be wet for an awfully long time through some pretty tricky conditions. But a procession has formed, an order has been established here. We have got Guyot Environment Team Europe, very different from what we saw in Alicante. They are now leading at the moment for this inshore section at the start of leg 2. Behind them, Team Holcim PRB, Biotherm in third, 11th Hour Racing Team in fourth, and then on the right-hand side of picture, just a little way behind, but still in touch, Team Milizia in fifth. Sam, interesting to see the different heels that the boats are going through here. It shows you just how tightly packed those different funnels of wind are.
Yeah, that's the breeze is pretty unpredictable, I guess. Changing a lot depending on the mountains. The crews will be able to see the wind coming and going by looking onto the water, looking at the different colours on the surface of the water. And the good thing with the Imokas is the one thing you are actually allowed to push a button to do is the keel. So they'll probably have someone playing the keel cant to react to those wind gusts.
Well, I think Guyot Environment Team Europe are going to be hoping they get all that right on this final approach towards Mark 2 before we turn out to sea. Team Holcim PRB are behind them, and we've actually got Abby Ehler that was on board with leg 1 winner, Team Holcim PRB. Abby Ehler is out on the water at the moment. Let's get the latest from her.
Yeah, thanks, Noel. It's the breeze has really changed. That the last couple of hours we've seen it peak at about 15 knots, and since the race has started, it's generally been on the decrease. It's a slightly tighter angle coming back to the mark on the leg they are now. So as soon as they're round, it's a slightly wider angle, so faster speed back to the last turning mark. And then once they're out in that channel, we're seeing an acceleration down the middle of the island. But I think as they start to head south, it's definitely looking a lot lighter, and there'll be V&G running into the night. So let's hope they can keep moving.
Oh, thanks, Abby. And I know you're going to be out in the water keeping your keen and experienced eye on what is happening. So we'll be checking back in with you for the moment. But right now, we are getting into the final stages of this last reaching leg, the reach out to Mark 1. Now we're on the reach back into the starting line. It was a left-hand turn, now it's a right-hand turn, leaving the start buoy to starboard. Guyot Environment Team Europe still in the lead as we listen in on board.
200 meters to bear away. $150 meters to bear away.
Robert Stanjek, the skipper of Guyot Environment Team Europe, calling that distance down to that right-hand turn. They are running in to this next turning mark, a right-hand turn for them. They're holding in quite high, and I think it's just to try and make sure they're going to exit that mark high, because behind them, this is what's chasing. We've got Team Holcim PRB just out of shot to the right, then Biotherm in third place and 11th Hour Racing Team in fourth, as we go on board at the moment with Paul Mayer's boat.
So you could just hear Paul Meillat, the skipper, Biotherm skipper, talking in French. He's on the helm and he can really feel what trim he needs. So he's helping the crew who are in the cockpit change the trim for him to make the boat go as fast as possible.
Guyot Environment Team Europe have reached that final turning mark of the import section. There you can see that white rib. That is the mark, and it's another good, smooth turn for Guyot Environment Team Europe. It's less wind than what we saw in Alicante, so the furl is easier, and as I say, the furl is easier. Take a look at Team Holcim PRB. They will get that under control, but you can see how the split-second difference in timing means that drop of speed while you're still wrestling with that leech of the Code Zero. 11th Hour Racing Team hoping for a smooth turn here just in front of them, but wide of the mark, so wide they've actually slipped out of shot, is Biotherm. So a chance here for Charlie Enright to slip into that windward position. And the exit positions from this mark, Sam, are going to be important because they're going to be on this jibe now for a while. If you've got clear breeze, it's going to be with you for, well, potentially the next 30 minutes or longer.
Yeah, Niall, because now they'll be heading, in theory, unless someone's got some really radical strategy, they'll be heading slightly lower on this next leg, as their goal now is to head south and eventually southeast once they get around this island, downwind to get out of the islands. I was looking on the decks to see if anyone's got another sail on deck ready to do a change, if they think there's enough breeze to go change to a spinnaker. But it looks to me like they're all going to stay on their Code Zeros for now. The Biotherm have got their spinnaker on the bow there, A2. You can see the sail there ready to go.
I think Biotherm are playing a longer game, and we did wonder exactly what happened at that turning mark, because Biotherm rounded, or certainly came in to that turning mark in third place, but they have sailed so wide round that turn. It was such a long period of time before they managed to get that Code Zero on the other side, the main under control, and then up to what should be a course angle. The 11th Hour Racing Team are now ahead of them. So it's Guyot Environment Team Europe in first place, Biotherm in second, and Team Holcim PRB in third at the moment. Guyot Environment Team Europe in first place, and I was just saying that it was Biotherm Racing that is ranked in second place, but in reality, Sam, they're playing a very dangerous game if they want to hold on to that ranking.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the rankings, if the rankings are counting the next mark as Cape Town, then in theory they could potentially be right now in second place. So it's always very complicated when you're doing a long ocean race, and right now they're actually sailing away from Cape Town. In reality. So the goal now is to get out of this bay, and around the island to hook into the VMG downwinds in the trade winds.
Now this transition, as we go from the inshore section of the departure of leg 2 to what is slowly going to become the ocean section, the open section, we have got the headlands here of Cabo Verde just to the west of Mindelo. They're going to be turning slowly to the left as they peel round the case as we go on board now with Robert Stanczyk.
Now, are you happy with the angle?
Sam, every helm, every skipper, everybody on a tiller, whether you're a beginner or an experienced Olympian, everybody's got a different style. Robert Stanczyk always seems very intense when he's holding onto the helm.
I think it's a pretty intense moment. Right at the beginning of the leg, they're in the lead, so there's pressure on them, and you can see him looking backwards. He's getting the feel of the boat, and he's asking. I think he was asking Seb if he's sailing with the right angle. Obviously, you're looking at the other boats to see if you can manage to sail a tiny bit lower without losing speed. So that's there. The comms, the communication loop that's going on at the moment is trying to sail as low and fast as possible, and big communication between the helmsman and the trimmers. You can see Holcim PRB going for a peel, so I guess they're going to peel to a masthead zero, a bigger surface area from the bowsprit, so maybe they don't have a spinnaker in their sail configuration.
Well, we're going to see those differences in sail choice and how they are sailing them as we are on board at the moment with Team Holcim PRB, 11th Hour Racing Team just behind. But the inshore section here for the departure of leg 2 is pretty much concluded. Now the boats have a little bit more choice, so this would be a good chance here to catch up with Abby Ehler on the water and get an idea as to what the conditions are like for our teams. So let's go to the water now to get the latest.
Thanks, Niall. Yeah, it's. I think they've definitely seen the best pressure for this part of the race. It's certainly looking very much lighter up ahead. I'm looking due south at the moment, and I would say it's probably 10 knots of wind, so they're just going to be sailing into less and less pressure as they go south, which would probably explain the sail change that Holcim are making. I know at our weather briefing this morning we were talking about the A3, which is a spinnaker sail for getting dead downwind. But also at the weather briefing, I remember Kevin saying that we were going to be going backwards all night with no wind. So I'm really happy that they've had such a good start. They're, moving fast through that reach process, and off they go now into lighter breeze. But at least there is breeze, so I'm happy for them.
Well, I can understand why you're happy. We're certainly happy as well. But for the sailors, that breeze is going to cause an awful lot of headaches. What sails to choose? And for Team Holcim PRB, at the moment, they are locked into a bit of a battle with 11th Hour Racing Team. Sam, this battle raging on while both teams, it looks like, choosing what sails to put up.
Yeah, I think they've both got the same choice there. It looks like neither of those boats are carrying a spinnaker, and they're both peeling to, as Abby said, the A3. It's the big Jenica, so it's a big overlapping sail that will be trimmed onto the, what we call them, jockey poles, or outriggers that are on the back of the boat. It's always a tricky one, that peel. It's great because you can get it in line and you can hoist the two sails up at the same time. But the big problem that you have to try and avoid is sucking one into another, so quite often it's difficult to to deploy the new one before you furl the old one. So we'll see if they manage to carry that off perfectly without pressure. And when you're two boats next to each other, it always adds a little bit of pressure on to get that sail change perfectly.
One boat with, at least for the moment, a little bit of space to breathe is Guyot Environment Team Europe. They are out in the lead, leading the fleet away from Mindelo. At the moment, they are sailing along nicely off from the start line. A clean turn at the first mark, an even smarter turn at the second, and now sailing along on starboard with the breeze getting clearer and clearer as we move away from those high volcanic mountains of the islands. Things are looking quite good here for Robert Stanczyk. Oh, Sam, we're talking about this sail change, and
Either it's taking a while to get everything ready and they don't want to rush it, or they are hedging their bets because these furled A3s have been up for a while but not deployed.
Well, Holcim have deployed, so they're on their A3. And you can see the difference in size between their A3 and the 11th hour's J0. Looks like we're just about to see an unfurl on 11th hour.
All right, happy with the field? Yeah, it's happening now.
Always easy to make a decision about what sail you're going to go for when your opponent just ahead goes for the same one and you think, well, that seems to be flying, that seems to be working. So Simon Fisher and Justine Latrue down below on the pumps. And there you can see that big, baggy Code Zero, the large downwind, light wind sail being deployed now. And looking quite nicely on this wind angle. Now it's being trimmed on. The old J sail will be furled on the inside, clearing the breeze for this sail. And these two look set. I mean, at the finish line in Cabo Verde, there wasn't too much between them, but that was after several days of racing. I mean, if they're going to start racing like this with a boat length between them, they are in for a very stressful evening.
I think it's more than a stressful evening. I think it's a stressful next 36 hours because they're sailing out. The trade wind's not blowing very well at the moment, and there's going to be some trade winds forming, and it's going to be the first boat that gets there that will really get an advantage. Yeah, big pressure on tonight to be the first boat to touch the new trade winds.
Just as we go here to the leaders with Guyot Environment Team Europe, I know they've just gone out of shot, but with behind them, Team Holcim PRB and 11th Hour Racing Team, both of those boats looked like they were sailing quite high, neither one wanting to bear away. But Robert Stanjek and the crew on board Guyot Environment Team Europe look much freer off the breeze. I guess this is the advantage that comes with being in the lead and having a bit of clearer air on your quarter.
Yeah, exactly. When you're two boats so close, you obviously push each other higher and higher, and there's a bit of a race goes on, and sometimes you have to take that decision to look at the bigger picture and not match race. And you can see on deck with Guyot Environment, they're preparing their spinnaker, which is a bit of a trickier sail change because the spinnaker is in a sock. So you've got to hoist that up, and then generally you'll have to furl the Code Zero before you can deploy the spinnaker from its sock. And there's a lot more, well, it's a lot trickier because you can get lines twisted a bit easier. I'd say it's a high tariff maneuver, but they've got a bit of a breathing space to get that done.
What a difference for these sailors. Handling these IMOCAs in these conditions, flat water, is something that they have been longing for on the 5 days of leg one. The pressure in terms of going onto the bow and being able to put the sail that you want up, it doesn't mean getting a face full of water. It doesn't mean potentially even being knocked down by the waves. So right now for these teams, this is a lovely ease into what will be a very difficult leg from Cabo Verde all the way down to Cape Town, 4,600 nautical miles away. The race for second and third with Team Holcim PRB in the lead at the moment with these two in second place, and in third it's 11th Hour Racing Team, Sam Goodchild forward of the mast. Kevin Escoffier on the helm as the race here continues in Cabo Verde, not just for first, but for second and third as well. Well, both of these teams, I'm waiting for the moment where they look like they have really freed themselves up from the breeze, because as you look through their sails, through their rig, you can see Biotherm, with what appears to be a proper spinnaker, sailing lower, a more direct route, and you wonder whether these two are just going to kind of battle each other out of the course a bit.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. It looks like there's obviously been different sail choice for this leg. So we've got 2 boats we can see with Spinnakers, Biotherm and Guyot. And it looks like Holcim and 11th Hour don't have a Spinnaker in their inventory, and I don't think Milizia has either. It looks like they were on a big Jenniker as well. So the next 3 days could be quite interesting to see if that makes a difference.
Well, we're just seeing now Guyot Environment, Team Europe, and they haven't got any head sail up, a Spinnaker, an A sail, a J, or anything at all. Let's go down to Abby Ehler on the water to find out what's happening.
Yeah, interesting that those boats, both Guyot and Biotherm, that have opted to go for the soft sail Spinnaker, chose to do it bareheaded, which means they'd obviously wound up the J0 that they started the race with, and they've chosen to do the peel with no head sail up. I guess, as Sam pointed out earlier, that the winches on board are very limited. The cockpit is often just a pile of rope, and a peel is just one of the hardest maneuvers you can do on the boat, just in terms of the sheet organisation, just managing the cockpit so that you have a clean change. So I'm not surprised that they've chosen to do a bareheaded manoeuvre. Biotherm, although it took them some time to do that change, they've obviously been able to soak a lot lower now, which you can see. Guyot looked to be having a little bit of a shocker with their Spinnaker, but once underway they'll be able to soak a lot lower than Holcim and 11th Hour.
Well, thanks, Abby. Guyot Environment, Team Europe, now with that Spinnaker up. But I mean, Sam, I mean, she's right. It's a decision to say, okay, we do not want a mistake at this early stage. We don't want to tangle. We don't want something to go wrong. Playing the longer game.
Yeah, exactly. And as Abby said, that especially that peel to Spinnaker is one of the hardest manoeuvres to do. And generally, it feels horrible furling the other sail up and going bareheaded. But often, if you take your time to do the manoeuvre, you end up not having any twists and end up doing a clean deploy of your Spinnaker, as it looks like they're doing right now. So it's a few meters lost, but in the general scheme of things, of how far they've got to go to get to Cape Town, that's not too bad.
Well, interesting to see here on this shot with Team Holcim PRB rigging up that windward outrigger on the back along with 11th Hour Racing Team. Both of these boats have sailed high, away from the short line of Cabo Verde, while everyone else has sailed low. There's going to be some manoeuvres and some tactical decisions to be made for all of our teams here over the next few minutes. On board with 11th Hour Racing Team, and they do have an outrigger set on that windward side. Sam, I know every Amoca down below is very different, but
to the west coast of the island.
Just trying to listen in to Simon Fisher. Are there any clues as to what they might be planning?
Well, just looking at where they're going, they're obviously going to need to jibe to head south. I'm not sure how the wind is coming around the corner of that island, whether there's any kind of wind shadow that they have to avoid, or if they want to cut that as close as possible. And it sounded like Simon was talking about a waypoint, so they've probably got some game plan where they've put a kind of a road book in, so they're obviously aiming for a specific point to jibe on the ley line, to start their zigzag round to the south.
Currently, this is the boat that's starting this leg in last place. Team Milizia, Will Harris as skipper, stepping up to replace Boris Herman with the injury to his foot, with an incident mixing food with boiling water. And the view on board, just how much rope spaghetti there is at the bottom of the cockpit. I mean, Sam, Abby as well, everyone's been talking about how difficult it is to manage these boats around these corners and how quickly things can get, well, untidy is probably the kindest way to say it. And they still have some manoeuvres to go. But Nico Lundvall, the navigator there, on the tiller, there's been so much talk about autopilot, Sam, and it's such an essential piece of equipment when you're on board these boats. But for now, at least, a human being on the tiller.
Yeah, the boats are sailing in really close confinement in a really unstable wind conditions. So having somebody driving the boat in these light winds, you tend to be a little bit more reactive to every single little tiny wind change. But actually, I wonder if they're just starting to go into autopilot mode. It looked like Nico was standing there, but he didn't actually have his hand on the tiller, and maybe he had his hand on the remote control, and he's just standing by and ready to kind of hit stop and take over if there is any kind of major wind change. You can see they've just put out their jockey pole to windward, so these boats generally, once you're sailing downwind, having that windward jockey pole ready doesn't really slow the boat down at all. So it's kind of the mode that you go once you know you're going to have to throw in jibes. It's almost an easy place to keep it.
Well, there's a good view of the overall positions from our boat, and the two boats to the right-hand side of your picture, Biotherm and Guyot Environment Team Europe, those are the two that are using the spinnakers, which is why we're seeing them sailing further south, further to the right-hand side of your picture. Team Holcim PRB, 11th Hour Racing Team, and Team Milizia at the moment all sailing with much more reaching sails, so sailing higher. There is some question about what the breeze is going to do on that coastline, a coastline that they have to go round, they have to pass on the leeward side of the island of Cabo Verde on their way down south towards the equator. But obviously, Team Holcim PRB and 11th Hour Racing Team are fighting it out and holding their course much closer to the breeze, with Biotherm and Guyot Environment Team Europe happy to soak at the moment.
Yeah, there's two modes of sailing going on now, so it's hard to compare the boats. They've obviously you've got this low VMG soaking mode with the spinnakers, and the three boats with the flat sails having to sail higher speeds, and they're going to have to cover more distance as they VMG downwind. And it was actually interesting now I did some weather routing yesterday, and it looks like the new breeze, the trade winds they have to try and hook into are really to the east, and so they are really going to have to pass through the wind shadow of this first island, and so this tonight, as Abby was saying, they could potentially doing some backwards sailing.
I mean, it's one of the things that I think is quite pure about offshore sailing, and certainly for the ocean race, and I know, other events as well, is offshore, yes, you are fighting against the competitors, but you're also fighting against the conditions, and just that simple battle can mean that, well, there's no wind, there's too much wind, it doesn't matter. You get out there and you try and do your best. Right now, this is about as soft a introduction into this race as they could have. For leg two, they are starting in shorts and t-shirt, in sunshine, in warmth, but as you can see, as we go on board with Team Milizia, work to do.
Du coup, ce style arrive à naviguer plus bas, donc il doit choper peut-être plus. Ouais. Parce que tu vois, là, on est à peu près.
So that was a bit of a discussion. Jan and Nico, two Figaro sailors, two Figaro winners, talking about tactics and strategy and trying to compare their angle and speed with the boats that are sailing under spinnaker. Obviously it's real close, almost inshore mode tactics still, which will probably be the mode that they're sailing in for the next 24 hours, really close racing and jibe for jibe, trying to gain metre by metre on the boat next to you, and probably not letting the boats out of view.
What started as a slight difference in sailing mode with those different sails now has gone into something enormous. I mean, we're watching here Team Holcim PRB, just to the other side of them is 11th Hour Racing Team. It is enormous, the difference in angles here. We have got three boats whose strategy is absolutely to sail due west, and we've got other teams who are trying to get some south sailing in as they can. I mean, is that a difference in design? Are people just simply playing into the strength of their boats, or a difference in sail selection? They pack certain sails for this leg, and that's going to be their strategy. That's it.
Yeah, I think it's the sail selection, the sail choice is really important here, and it's going to be really interesting. And there are definitely two ways of thinking, and one is to you can get an advantage with the spinnaker, but in such a small range of wind. So it's from about this kind of 8 knots true wind speed to probably about 14 knots true wind speed, where you get an advantage when it really is VMG downwind with the spinnaker. But overall and around the world or on a leg, are you going to have enough of those conditions for it being worth taking the spinnaker, for the risk of a spinnaker is a more fragile sail? If you push it a little bit too far in the wind range, you could blow it up. Or is it better to have one of these masthead, a little bit tougher sails that can sail a bigger range on board? And it's a really hard choice of sail to make, especially for a leg like this, which starts in no wind and it's going to go and sail in the Southern Ocean.
And it bakes in those navigational choices that you ultimately have to make. It's amazing how a simple choice can really have so many ramifications over the miles. We've just seen 11th Hour Racing team jibe. We knew it was coming. We knew they were set for it, but there's a big difference here in the breeze. The question is how much wind do we see into the coast? How much wind is off? We have got Team Militia right now. They are furling up the staysail that they were using inside their A3. And that could be because they are also getting ready to jibe as well here, following on from that example for 11th Hour Racing team. But you can see just down to leeward how well that soaking mode with that spinnaker, the Biotherm have been able to put on something very strong down below. So we go on board at the moment with Team Militia. Nico Lundven on the helm, searching for breeze here in Cabo Verde. Well, the question is, what's the breeze doing? So let's go to Abby Ehler. She is down on the water at the moment. Abby, from where you are, is it easy to see what the breeze is like? How much choice do these sailors have? We're going to come back to Abby in just a moment. They are repositioning to try and get an idea of what that breeze is like from the cliffs. As we see now, Team Militia jibing behind. And a nice, smooth, clean turn for Team Militia at the moment in 5th place. But the positioning here, the angle that they are lining themselves up to pass these western headlands of Cabo Verde, so important. The team at the moment still pushing out to the west, not jibing right now. Team Holcim PRB still pushing out, but we've got Abby Ehler at the moment. Abby, what does it look like on the water?
So yeah, we've seen most of the boats have jibed now. Holcim have chosen to extend. I know that they'll be trying to get the acceleration that's apparent down the middle of the islands. And this will play out through the night as they progress down to the islands further south. There's acceleration through the islands, but then you're going to have to deal with the wind shadow around the island. So it's kind of a catch-22 scenario. But I'm pretty sure, based on our briefing this morning, that Team Holcim will be wanting to get the acceleration of breeze, which is probably why they're holding out on starboard jibe. Meanwhile, the rest of the fleet are choosing to stick a little closer to the coast and are all now on port jibe.
Oh, thanks, Abby. I mean, we have got the same problem, Sam, haven't we? That the sailors have got the view that we've got from the water level with that setting sun. Normally you can see those patches of breeze, but as that sun comes down, you know, you've had a chance to get a bit of a good view. You've tried to read the topography, and you're just going to hope that your guess was right.
Yeah, it's really hard. What I can see is how high those mountains are, and how scary that looks from as a sailor's point of view, when you know you're going to have to sail through underneath that. And yeah, as Abby was saying, it's the question is do you cut it close to the shore and hope that you can just sneak through a shorter distance of wind shadow, or do you try going a little bit further offshore, thinking that maybe there'll be a little bit less of a wind shadow effect, but you're going to have to sail through a longer distance of disturbed air? And yeah, that's the question. And whether it's day or night, you have different effects as well at night time. sometimes it can be a little bit easier.
It's a really good point. The temperature is starting to run out now from the day. The sun is coming down, things are getting much more disturbed on the race course, and with a bit of cold air sinking down, we might see a big change in the breeze. So hopefully our experienced navigators have made the right decisions for them to try and keep their boats moving. Team Militia there, sailing downwind at the moment with some work to do in 4th, 5th position, but we have got some incredible navigators, some incredible sailors, and you can see the way that the fleet are sort of stacked up from east to west. You can almost see where people think the breeze will be. I mean, everybody has kind of staked their intention to the board. We have got Team Holcim PRB furthest west. They firmly think that that is the position to be in. Guyot Environment Team Europe, they were leading of both turning marks, and now at the moment they're around about in 3rd place, but they think the middle of the track. To the right of picture at the moment and to the east of Guyot Environment Team Europe, we have got 11th Hour Racing Team and we have got Biotherm as well. Both of those teams thinking the further inshore course is where the breeze is going to be. The best sailors in the world, but there isn't too much agreement at the moment.
No, it's pretty tricky, and it's interesting. They've all now got their foils in, so we're back into old-fashioned sailing mode. Downwind with a spinnaker. Well, you can see with Guyot and with Biotherm, foils retracted, spinnaker up, soaking as low as possible. Yeah, it's a very different from what we saw at the start of leg 1.
Yeah, and like you say, we're getting back into that standard style of sailing where it's just about keeping those boats going. And for all of our teams, as they are heading off now, that sun is coming down, the temperature is running out. They will be remembering that final meal that they had in Cabo Verde, but they are off now onto that journey, that 4,600 nautical mile race as they go. This is going to be a big offshore leg, and while at one level we could say that this start is easy, it's not the big wind, it's not the big waves, but it's going to be a taxing night here for these sailors as they start leg 2 from Cabo Verde. Difficult evening as the sun comes down and the breeze goes fluky. But Sam, for the moment, certainly each of our teams have reason to be pretty happy. Guyot Environment Team Europe, a very strong performance, and certainly in this race in the early stages.
Yeah, I think that's a great boost for them, as they've got, well, they've had a 50% crew change. They had a hard time in the inshore section of leg 1 start, so this will help boost their morale for the start of this leg. And yeah, I think it's great to see them heading off on a real ocean leg, and it must be hard for the sailors as well to think, okay, we're sailing off easy today, but we've actually got to go into the Southern Ocean on this leg.
That is where this leg is going to finish. It is going to finish in the Southern Ocean, a long way from the images that we're seeing here. But amazing to see 11th Hour Racing Team on the right-hand side of your picture and Biotherm on the left. These two boats sailing wildly different modes downwind, but then after the jibe, they have converged back together again. So two different styles, but the same outcome, or indeed only maybe a boat length between them, as we're on board at the moment with Paul Mayer's Biotherm Racing. Well, as the boats are leaving the shoreline of Cabo Verde and the sun is coming down, let's go back to Abby Ela out in the water for the latest.
So what I'm seeing from here in the water is that Guyot appears to be in best pressure, probably with Militia just up further north of where they are. As I said before, the acceleration between the islands is really apparent. Biotherm, 11th Hour, who are closest inshore, appear to be much softer. Holcim, which extended over to the other side of the channel, they appear to be sailing a much lower angle. It's a little bit hard to say how much breeze they have over there, but definitely Guyot is in pressure, and they seem to have a great angle coming down the channel here.
Oh, thanks, Abby. I mean, Sam, that's
Quite an incredible situation there for 11th Hour Racing Team, light on the eastern side. Looks like potentially they are going to have to jibe back out because they are kind of locked into those higher lanes. All of our navigators here, all of our teams, they're going to have to play for their strength. They're going to have to work hard to make their boats work for them as leg 2 gets underway here in Cabo Verde. Just the beginning, the final 4,600 nautical miles still to go here, all the way to Cape Town. Well, from the start line, Guyot Environment Team Europe looking very strong. That's the confidence boost that this team needed after that tricky start for leg 1 in Alicante, and holding that lead, picking the right lines into that first turning mark, that left-hand turn. Really important for Robert Stanjek here, as we can see, well, what every skipper wants to see when you're racing around an import course. Everybody behind you. Another good turn for Guyot Environment Team Europe, and closing down the advance from Team Holcim PRB behind, who wasn't quite able to match that smooth transition from port to starboard and getting that code 0 onto the other side. All of our teams, though, being able to put in some good speeds, and then that transition patch, that difficult decision as to what sail you were going to put up and ultimately what tactic you were going to follow for the next few hours. Team Holcim PRB and 11th Hour Racing Team locked into a battle of much higher angles, and as we saw though for the whole fleet, as those two came together, especially with Biotherm much more happy on the eastern side of the course, all of those strategies really resulted in only 1 or 2 boat lengths between all of the teams. Well, back to live pictures with Guyot Environment Team Europe looking very happy with that spinnaker, and as Abby was saying before, good pressure in those sails at the moment, and this is going to be very good news for Guyot Environment Team Europe. To the left, to the right, each of those boats not quite in the best of that wind funnel between the islands. Closer to shore, it's 11th Hour Racing Team, ranked first at the moment, but how true that position is based on where the breeze is best, we'll have to wait and see. Biotherm in second, Guyot Environment Team Europe, as we were saying, in third place, and then behind Team Malizia and Team Holcim PRB further out to the west. So, difficult challenge here for all of these sailors. It's all about finding some power or reducing some drag. That's why we're seeing those rudders lifted out of the water, the ones that we're not using. But we are in the early stages here of leg 2. We know that this one is going to be a big leg. Going from north to south, so many transitions in the breeze to sail through. And for our skippers, when they were leaving the dock here in Cabo Verde, they were well aware of the challenge that lay ahead.
For this leg, actually the wind is a bit lighter than usually. It might be a little slower and longer on time, so yeah, we see what it brings. It's a tough long leg, this one.
First 24 hours should be pretty light. You know, we got a good plan, but it's pretty fleet dependent, just because we get a lot of leverage in the first 24 hours, and we might not initially be pointing the way that we eventually need to go. So could be interesting.
How do you handle the doldrums? Do you have tantrums? Do you get angry?
No, it's okay, you know. And doldrums, sometimes it could be quick as well. I've done it in 2021 for Jacques Vabre, it was okay, so I wish we have the same one than 2 years ago.
You know, it's always been planned that I was going to take over from Boris from 1 or 2 of the legs, so it's just a bit earlier than expected at the moment, and you know, we've done some training, we're all ready. I've sailed so much with the team and with the boat, so I think I'm just feeling ready for it.
I think we have pretty good boat for the light wind, and it's light wind condition for the beginning, so it will be probably a closer race with all the boat maybe more like at the beginning of the first one, and so it will be probably interesting, and for the fan and for the public will be really good.
Are you going to cross the line first? Is this going to become a thing?
I don't know, I hope, but that shows that on the boat, 2 people, the 2 girls, Amélie and Anne, they never cross the line, so we'll probably do something.
Cape Town is the destination, and Sam, leg 2 has got underway. As we predicted, it was tricky from the start.
It was tricky, and I think the next 24 hours are going to be really tricky for the teams. I can't wait to watch.
It's going to be light winds, it's going to be hard, but at least for our sailors, physically at the moment at least, it is not too difficult out there on the water. Leg 2 underway for the 14th edition of the Ocean Race. It certainly is set to be quite the challenge for our sailors out on the water on the way to Cape Town.